Today is November the 6th, 2019. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and today I'm in Stillwater to interview Luke Walker, a 1950 alum of Oklahoma A&M, and also a lieutenant colonel, retired 1975. So thank you for meeting with me today. Let's begin with learning when and where you were born.
I was born on the 22nd of March in Durant, Bryan County, Oklahoma. I've written that 5,000 times, the full place of birth.
And what year?
1925.
1925, okay. And tell me a little bit about your parents.
Okay, my mother was born and raised in Durant, and that's where she met my father. And my father was born in Foster, Oklahoma, which is in Garvin County, close to Falls Valley. And Dad was doing something down there, ended up being married to my mother. And during the years after they were married, Dad worked at different places doing different things, and he put in a cafe with his brother-in-law in Durant. And he met a lot of people. The one that really surprised me was a gentleman stopped one day when I was living in Falls Valley. A gentleman stopped and visited with my father for about 30 minutes. And when he left, I said, "Dad, who was that?" And he said, "Luke, that's Dr. Henry Bennett, president of Oklahoma A&M. I said, "Well, where did you meet him?" And he said, "In Durant." And I never pursued it. And here he knew Dr. Bennett.
Wow.
And we lost Dr. Bennett in 1950, I think it was. He was working on a .4 program for the federal government, got involved in an airplane crash in Tehran, Iran. His wife was on the plane too. The whole plane, we lost what was on there. Dr. Bennett went with them.
Hmm. But you remember seeing him?
Yes, yeah. I saw him and he knew Dad. They visited for 30 minutes. Now, the president of a university who knew my father, a cafe owner, but they knew each other.
What was the name of the cafe?
Roy's Cafe. The Chicken Dinner King would say. My mother and father ran a cafe.
Okay. And did you have brothers and sisters?
Oh yes, I had an older brother and a younger brother. And my older brother and I were recruited by the football coach at East Central State Teachers College at Ada, Oklahoma. It has changed its name. It is now East Central University. But it was called East Central State Teachers College. We went over in '42 and played football.
Huh. So you were the same age? Well, no, he was older.
My older brother, he was a year and a half older than me.
But you both went together?
Oh yes. Somehow they had changed, messing with the schools, they had changed the grades and everything. Mm-hmm. And my brother was a year ahead of me in high school, but when we counted the credits and everything, we graduated together the same year. Although I should have graduated a year after he did, or he should have graduated a year before I did, but we graduated. And so the football coach asked us to come over on scholarship, and we went over and played football.
Okay. So you graduated high school in '42?
Yes.
From Pauls Valley?
Pauls Valley High School, yes.
And so at East Central, what were you planning to major in?
Well, campusology. I stayed in a place called Finchum Hall, and a men's dormitory. There was school wasn't that big, There was just one, and in the ladies' dormitory was where the dining room was, and we ate all our meals over in the ladies' dorm. Okay? And that's where I met my second wife, who should have been my first wife.
Is there a story there?
Oh, yes. Yes, I was going to school there. In 1946, I was discharged from the Navy, and I came home, and I wanted to go back over where I'd gone before to East Central. And I went back, and I had a bunch of my buddies there that I'd gone to school with in 1942. And he said, "Look, come play football." I said, "I don't have to. I'm on the GI Bill." Well, in the end, they conned me into playing. So I played football again for that semester. And was really enjoyable. And one day, a young lady spoke to me and says, "Are you Luke Walker?" And I turned around and I said, "Yes." She said, "My sister went to school with you here in 1942, and she said to tell you hello." I said, "Well, that's nice." And she had a young lady with her. And that's the first day I ever met my second wife, who should have been my first wife right there.
And what was her name?
Jo Annette Johnson.
Joy Annette?
Jo Annette Johnson. And what she had done, we used to have the Oklahoma College for Women at Chickasha. Mm-hmm. Now it's technology and science or something now. And it's a men and women's college both. It was just a women's college. And Jo Annette had gone to school there 1 year. Then she decides to come up here and go to school. And that's where I met her, though, over at East Central that summer. She was going to summer school there.
So who was your first wife?
Okay.
If you want to tell.
Oh, yes. It was a young lady I met at East Central. She was over there to go to school. And I knew her, real pleasant young lady. And Jo Annette wanted to come down from Stillwater and watch me play football one weekend. And my first wife that I married said, I said, "I'm looking for a place for her." She said, "Look, she can have my room. I'm going home for the weekend." I said, "Well, great." So, Norma Lee, Bunny, my first wife, she had to go home too. She lived in Wallika. She went home, and Jo Annette came down from Stillwater and spent the weekend there so she could watch me play football. What a deal.
Were you married at? No.
Oh, no.
Okay, so the timeline, I've got to get it straight in my head.
So when I went down to visit with Jo Annette's parents, she lived in Boswell, a little town about that big between Durant and Hugo.
Okay.
But you blink your eyes, and when you're driving through her hometown, you missed it. I went down, and her mother was not hostile, but she did not treat me like a future son-in-law at all. And I thought, well, what is going on? I said, does she think I'm going to work in a cafe the rest of my life? I'm in college. And she was never pleasant or anything. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, well, I'm getting into something here. And I had already given Jo Annette an engagement ring. But her mother had picked someone else out that she wanted her daughter to marry. And I didn't realize this at the time. So I came to school here, and the next semester, Joannette's mother wouldn't let her come back up here and go to school. So I'm engaged to her.
Mhm.
Her mother's making her stay in beautiful downtown Boswell, Oklahoma. And I'm up here in school. And Joe came up a couple of times and everything. And I said, boy, this is not going to work. Her mother is so intense in marrying her daughter to somebody else that she thinks that I'm not good for much of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I said, okay. So I went and married Bunny, my first wife, the girl that had, young lady who had let Joannette stay in her room.
Mm-hmm.
I married her. And we stayed married till 27 years. She finally got hostile one day and walked out right after I had retired from the Army, and I was living in Midwest City in 1975.
Wow.
And she was gone didn't realize it at the time. But one of the strange things that happened, every time Joannette would come through Paul's Valley, she had to get down to her mother's. At first she came on a bus, then she got her own car. She was living in Cleveland, Ohio. But she called Mother and talked to her because my family had Joe in the family.
Mm.
And then she'd visit with Mother and then drive on down to Boswell to be with her mother. So in 1977, Joe's first husband had incurable cancer.
Mm.
And he couldn't do anything for him. It took him 2 years to die, and he did. And Joe was still upset and everything about this, but she called Mother and said, well, where's Luke? And she said, Luke's retired now and he lives in Midwest City. And she said, well, I'd like to talk to him if I could, or maybe visit with him. And she said, I will have Luke's brother call you. My brother knew Joe before I ever met her. He was in school there in 45.
Mm.
And he dated Joannette's roommate. And he knew her.
Small world.
Isn't it strange sometimes how things work out? Anyway, I called Joe. And she was living in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, so that's how you got there. Okay.
And I said, well, I'm not busy right now, and I would like to see you. And she said, I would like to see you too, Luke. And she said she had lost her husband 2 years ago, and she had 4 children. And one of the boys, her last boy, had been born in 39, when Joe was 39. And he was only about 12 years old. So he still lived at home with her. So she said, I'm going to tell you how to get in here. The interstate bypasses runs right behind my house. And she told me how to get in there real easy if I drove up. And I said, well, I'll see you Wednesday. And I drove up there. And she opened that door. Absolutely gorgeous. And I said, well, I was on my way to Boswell, Oklahoma, and somehow I made a wrong turn, and I've ended up here in Omaha. And she reached up and grabbed me and said, get in here. 6 months later, we were married.
Wow.
Yeah. We were married in January of 79.
79, okay.
30-something years after we were engaged. You see how things happen?
Mm-hmm.
Strange, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
But it worked out, and if I'd ever got promoted in the Army, I'd have never seen Joe again.
Mm.
No, I would have never seen him. I'd have to stay in another 3 years. If you get promoted in the military, they require you to stay on active duty a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. And then the whole world turned upside down. Joe and I got married, and we were living in the house that her husband had bought many years ago. And I said, Joe, we're married and we cannot live in this house. Your 4 children resent me being here. Their fathers bought this house. And we've got to get out of here. We can't live here. And she says, well, she said, it took me 22 years to get out of Oklahoma, and I'm not going back. I said, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. There are many other places we can go. And she said, would you think of going to Colorado Springs and looking? I said, absolutely. I said, anywhere you would like to go that you would be happy with. She lived in 4 places when she was married. She lived in Cleveland and Minneapolis, Omaha, and one other place, Colorado Springs, I think, in that. And so we went out to Colorado Springs, and flying in, she had friends there that she had made that wanted us to stay with them while we looked around. And when we flew in to Colorado Springs, you come off of the Oklahoma prairie and the Kansas prairie, and there is the beautiful Rocky Mountains right there. Snow-capped, everything. And Pikes Peak was right behind us, 30 miles away. And I said, hey, we don't even need to stay. Let's get back on the plane, go back, sell that house, and come out here and build us a home. She said, no, our friends are expecting us. So we stayed 3 or 4 days, went back to Omaha and sold our house. And we moved to Colorado Springs and built a home. And we didn't realize what was going to happen to Colorado Springs.
Oh.
I think we paid $150,000 for a lot in a 3-floor home. Now this is in the 1979. Things were much more inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
And 30 years later, when I left, I had a notice from the county tax commission saying, we revalued your property and your house is now valued at $410,000 and we will tax you, but the taxes were real low.
That's a good profit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The one that's murder is Nebraska. We bought a home. When Joe showed the first signs of dementia, she wanted to be near her children. And I said, okay, you're their mother and everything, and we will sell our home here and move back to Omaha. And we did. And when we moved back to Omaha, things just didn't work out or very pleasant or anything. And I had bought another home. And I said, before I bought the home, I said, now Joe, we are not going to leave this for at least a year, just in case you change your mind. I had a suspicion she didn't want to stay in Omaha, but she didn't. So now I've got another home to sell. And I didn't get robbed on it. I gave that first home away. I sold that thing for $275,000. And the tax assessor already said, we're going to value your property at $410,000. We built a beautiful 3-floor home. But when I was in Colorado Springs, I got involved with the Olympic Training Center is there for about, 6 or 8 sports. The home for it is Colorado Springs. Shooting is one of them. And I became a coach at the Olympic Training Center for shotgun shooting.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then one day Lloyd came, he was the chief instructor, retired Air Force senior master sergeant, super guy. One day he said, look, we don't need coaches anymore, but we do need referees. Now, in international shooting, they're called judges, not referees. I said, yeah, no problem. And he says, they will pay you better than I'm paying. I don't know. And I said, okay, what do I have to do? And he says, well, we've got a professional coming down here. They'll work with us for a week for a couple of other guys that he wanted to run through that school. And international shooting is almost the same as black and white. International shooting is tough, really tough. And it's, you have to be very careful with it. And the judge, who we call a referee, when the judge starts the shooting match, okay, there is no talking permitted. If you want to say anything and you're shooting, you have to raise your hand. And the judge will walk over and say, what's your problem? and look at his clock and say, you're not going to stop this match for 3 minutes. What's your problem? Okay. And I was usually pleasant. I only got into I had to kick a guy off in the range one time and all that being a judge, because it's a different thing completely. In American shooting, for instance, shooting skeet, guys are jabbering all the time. Go get them all. You know, you don't say one word in international shooting unless you raise your hand, and the judge will walk over and say, what's your problem? Quick. And he'll look at his watch, because he's going to give you 3 minutes. Once the match starts, they don't want anything to slow it down. In American, it'll take a 5-man squad to shoot 100 targets, almost 2 hours. Jawboning and drawing, and not in international, boy. It's just right down there, and they don't mess around. And the judge in international shooting can turn around and say, I'm tired of the crowd making so much noise, get them out of here. And you have to kick the crowd, and they cannot watch that match. All that judges have to say that. And it costs, in trap, what we call trap, we shoot it out of a small little house, always in the middle of a skeet range. And it shoots from 16 to 27 yards according to your ability. The international shooting bunker has 5 stations. There's 3 machines on each station. Okay, and they originally threw the bird 90 yards. And when I first started shooting it in Europe, I was shooting international over there because that's all they shot. We were shooting an 1.25 ounce quarter of shot at 1,350 feet per second. You better have a really nice gun. It will eat you and your breakfast. Then people started shooting 110 straight, and they dropped it back to 1 ounce and 1/8. Then a bunch of people still ran it. They brought it back to 1 ounce a shot. They didn't change anything in throwing the birds. And people were still shooting, breaking all the target, and they dropped it back to 7/8 of an ounce. Now that's a 20 gauge load. 20 gauge shoots normally 7. And they quit. And they had moved the bird back a little, but not far. But international trap, if you go to build one of those bunkers, it'll cost you $250,000. And we don't have many people or international bunkers in this country. So when we go to the Olympics, they shoot international. We don't do good. We had one young lady, bless her heart, she and her husband, her father, came out from California one day to Colorado Springs and said that she would like to shoot international skeet and see if she could compete in it, because she'd been an All-American shooter. And she walked out there and she cleaned those birds like you would. And our coach Woodhouse, he was just jumping up and down for joy. So he said, yes, you can come. We have tryouts each year where we select who gets on the team. Then they go to matches and all expenses are paid. They can come live in a barracks hotel there in Colorado Springs and train. It is really nice. So this young lady came and cleaned the birds and shot and made the team. Well, each year they have 4 big tryouts worldwide for all the competitions. And you must go to that and place first, second, or third in order to be invited to the Olympics. They don't care who you are. No, you have to go to one of those tryout matches. And there's 4 worldwide. They move them around. And that's the only way you can go. Otherwise, you are not invited to participate. This young lady was on the team. They went to shoot in one of these tryout matches in Japan. They got up there to shoot, and the Japs wouldn't let her shoot.
Because she was female?
No. You had to be at least 18 to shoot a shotgun in Japan for females. And they didn't give a damn about that being a tryout. She's not 18 and she's not shooting. So she didn't get to compete. She'd already won a quota though. But they wouldn't let her shoot. She wasn't 18. That was their law, their federal law. Women cannot shoot unless they're 18. And she wasn't 18. Even though she was on the U.S. Olympic skeet team.
Sounds like that was a good job after retirement.
Yes.
It was?
I really, really did enjoy it, and I worked at it. And when I became a judge, I got invited to matches all over the United States, and to travel and everything. I was making good money.
On skills you'd learned in the Army or the Navy?
Yes, well, in the Army. Actually, I had been a skeet shooter and competing, but it was American skeet. Olympic skeet is called ISU, International Shooting Union. The whole world, except the Americans, use the ISU rules. We got this stuff watered down for a little 12-year-old girl can shoot 100 straight in any of our competition. She can't do that for international. You put her in that bunker, you don't know which trap of those three it's coming out of. All you know is it's going to be a certain height and a certain distance and travel. Now, I think they cut the international targets back to 80 meters because they've reduced the shot you could use. An ounce, 7/8 of an ounce is nothing. And that young lady has shot on our Olympic team ever since. Kim Rhode is her name. And her father had brought her out from California, and she makes the American skeet, female skeet team, and shoots, and she has set an Olympic record. She's been shooting in it for 25 years now, every year, every 4 years.
And you know her.
Oh, yeah.
Or you knew her when.
Oh, yeah. Where was it one time? I went somewhere to do something years later, and looked up, and here's Kim, and she said, "Look, what are you doing here?" But she's married, she had a little girl, probably had more than that. But she's shot on that Olympic team every year for, 30 years now.
Good for her.
Oh, yeah. But she was just a little 16-year-old girl when she and her dad came out there to see if she could shoot an Olympic skeet. Okay, she could eat it, for God's sake.
Well, then let's back up and talk about when you learned how to do that.
What, shoot?
Yeah. Well, maybe let me catch up on my timeline.
Okay.
In 42, you went to East Central. At
Yes,
and then-
one semester.
And then you got drafted?
Oh, no, I was 17.
You volunteered?
I volunteered.
Your mother or father had to sign?
Oh, yeah, at 17, Dad had to sign the papers, absolutely. Or one parent had to sign them. And I enlisted in the Navy and I was discharged April the 10th, 1946.
So you were there in it for 4 years? Well, roughly 4 years?
Yes.
Why did you volunteer? What prompted you to volunteer?
Well, I knew they were going to draft me when I turned 18. It was, they drafted everybody. And the minute I turned 18, I had to go down and register for the draft. And God, in a month or two, they'd had me. And I saw those poor Army people come in a hot July in Oklahoma. They had khakis and long sleeve khaki shirts and a tie on and big globs of perspiration on them. I said, I'm not getting in that Army, so I'll just go get in the Navy. And I did. I still have my Navy uniforms. I have one set of my Navy uniforms. Still have it. It's a little old now.
So in that tour of duty, where did you serve?
In the Navy. I went to boot camp in San Diego. Then they sent me to the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas for 4 months to make me a machinist. Made people run lathes, shaping machines, gas welding, stuff like that. They're called machinist mates. And they run all the propulsion units in the Navy right today, the machinist mates do. So I went to Lawrence, Kansas. Lawrence, Kansas, in case you've never seen it, the Kaw River runs right through the middle of Lawrence, Kansas, but over to the side is a huge hill, 300 feet high, flat top. And the University of Kansas is on top of that hill. So I went there, and then I finished that, and was promoted to a fireman first class. And they decided I was going to be a PT boat, qualified motor machinist, really. And they sent me to Detroit, Michigan, in Pontiac, they sent me to Detroit, Michigan, and the Pontiac Car Company was closed, and it was making the engines for our PT boat. Plus, they were also making Rolls-Royce engines for the Brits. Now, ours had a monstrous carburetor on it, that big. Pistons were this big in that engine. And we were still messing around with car. The Rolls-Royce engines that Packard was making were fuel injection. The injectors were right on the cylinders. You didn't have a carburetor on a fuel injection. And I was interested more what I'd go over and watch him making his fuel injection engine. But I don't know, we were at school about 3 months. Now I went through school. They sent me to be in a Navy unit and ended up in a suburb of San Francisco called San Bruno. And the Navy put together, there was 200 of us in this unit and all our equipment. And they loaded all of us on a ship, equipment and personnel, and we took off in the Pacific. And I think that was about January now of 44. And we got out to New Guinea, and we started going up New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, where is right across the water from New Guinea. And that was where Jack Kennedy got run over, and his boat was in the Solomon Islands in 1942. And we got, I forget, I think it was a place called Finchum. And at that time, the island of New Guinea is big. It was split. The left half of it belonged to Holland, to the Dutch. They owned it. The right part of it belonged to the Aussies, right there. You just go across a small sea and you're in, but it was owned by the whole left. Anyway, we started up and got half loaded off, and they came back and said, put it all back on the ship, we're going further. Okay. And I slept outside on a steel deck with a canvas thing that was issued to us in the Navy. It was a sleeping thing that you could roll up, but you could make a bed out of it. And we laid that down on the steel deck and used our life jacket as a pillow. And it took us 3 weeks to get all the way out to New Guinea to where we were going to set up a PT boat repair facility. We could do anything to a PT boat. And we got out there and we got half offloaded. They said, no, we're going farther north. Put everything back on it. Went up half the distance of New Guinea and went into a little island, wasn't very big, called Mills Windy, and offloaded everything, put up our tents. The Seabees came in and built a dock there because on one side of Mills Windy, we had deep, very deep water and any ship could dock here. On the other side of that island, when the tide was out, was nothing but white sand. And it was a little strange that there was that beautiful island. And on one side, it was 2,000 or 3,000 deep. Any ship could dock there. And what they had done was we all lived in tents. We built wooden floors with plywood and everything. And the only thing that separated us from where the officers lived, and they lived in tents just like it, was a 6-foot camouflage cloth fence of cotton. And that's all, just just to make a marker different. This is officer's country. This is EM and non-commissioned officer. Well, one night, a hospital ship came in and docked. Okay. And some of our real smooth warrant officers went on that ship and got some of those nurses off of that to come over and have a party, which they did. They had a drunken brawl, and with all night gigging and laughing and drinking and everything. And the base commander of Mias Wendy was another person, because I have pictures of it, of the island. You look at it and say, what's all those PT boats? Yeah, you're right, the PT. The base commander found out that these officers had taken these nurses off and had a drunken brawl. He went over, told them, and posted and put a big marker up. No women permitted at any time on this island, and put it right there where the ship's docked. So sure enough, here come another hospital ship. And these warrant officers who were dating these nurses going on there, they thought, well, hey, we're gonna have another brawl. So we'll go in there and get some nurses come over. And when they came back, there was a guard there on the dock at all times. You know, he had his little carbine, caliber 30. And she stepped off the walkway off the ship onto the dock, and a young guard walked over and says, you see that sign? It says, no women permitted on this island at any time. That's you. Now would you please get back on that ship? And he reached in his pocket, put the cartridge magazine in it, cocked it, moved your gun right in her middle and said, I won't ask you again. Get back on that ship. You were going to shoot her? Hell yes. The sign said, absolutely no female may put a foot on this island at any time.
Would he have shot her if she?
Hell yes, he'd have shot her. He wouldn't have messed him up here. People were brutal, man. No, he'd been instructed. No women. Period. That's it.
So how long were you there?
Until the war ended. We were getting ready to move our unit to Okinawa. The Americans had just conquered Okinawa, and all the PT boats were up there. And we were getting ready to move to Okinawa. And we used those nukes on the Nipponese, and they said, we give up. And the war ended in August, right then.
You remember the day you heard that?
Oh, yes.
It was over?
August 15th or 17th. Anyway, our unit published a little news bulletin, mimeograph, 2 or 3 pages every day. And I still have it. I kept it. I've still got it. Big things on there, war ends and all that stuff, you know. I have a lot of memorabilia and stuff, I say.
That was a BJ day?
BJ Day, yes. See, the Germans quit first. They quit in May, as I remember. May 21st in Europe. The Germans surrendered in May. But then, and another thing I learned in the military, the Americans, and no wonder they call us ugly Americans, we don't pronounce the right name of other countries. Japan, the rest of the world, and the people in the country call themselves Nipponese. They're Nippons. They're not Japanese. They're Nippon. But the dumb-ass Americans, excuse my French, We call them Japanese. And that's not right. They don't call themselves Jap. They look at you like an idiot when you say that. Now, another one. I learned Berlin when I went there in '60 because the Russians, we had the whole city was open to Russians on the east and French, British, and Americans on the west of the big main highway. Berlin is 21 miles long. It's pretty good size. Berlin is a German word for swamp. So when there were 3 big rivers that ran together there, when they started building it, they just named it what it was. It was a swamp, and the name was Berlin. And there's a big lake around it, part of it, called the Bodensee, where the rivers ran together and formed a lake. Okay, big. It's big on one side because Berlin is 21 miles long. It's big, and up until '61, we got along with the Russians, and that's when they started building that barricade. And I got sent up there. I was down in Orléans. We call Orleans. The French call it Orléans. Okay. I was down there. I'd spent a year in Iran in the army, and my brother was stationed in Orléans, and I wanted to be with him, so I requested an inter-theater transfer rather than come back to the States and go somewhere. So they sent me to. And my brother was there, and he had 3 children at the time. And we worked in the same office. It was really nice. We're both in the Army, we're both captains, and I'm working with my brother. And then when the Russians started building that wall, the people in Berlin, we had a Berlin brigade of U.S. Army. We had about maybe 800 people in the brigade. It was our occupation force up there. They sent me up. My boss came in and said, "Luke, I've got a request here from Berlin, and they want an ammunition officer. And they want someone who has been here, knows the system, knows where everything is. And I'm planning on sending you up there." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "No problem. I'll be glad to go to Berlin." And I said, "But I should call my wife first and let her know." And he said, "No, I've already talked to Bunny, and she said she'd go." But I said, "You call my wife before you tell me?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, she said she'd go." The Army is very unique. So I went up there, and I wasn't up there 6 months till the colonel who sent me up there died of a heart attack. So I came back for 5 days. They had a funeral for him and everything. And we had been real good friends, and even though he was a colonel and I was just a major, we socialized, our family did and everything. And we had his funeral. And his wife told him that she didn't want to see anybody after that funeral except me and another captain. So when we had the funeral and everything, they had a house. We went over to it and was visiting. And right there was a big table with condolence messages in it and everything. Mm-hmm. His name was Walter Denhard. And I was over fingering through it, just looking at different things. I looked down and saw one, and it said, "Nathan D. Twining." said, good Lord. And Nathan D. Twining was the chief of staff of the United States Air Force. And Walt had worked for him somewhere, and he knew Walt had passed away. And he had written a handwritten note to his wife and signed it Nathan D. Twining, chief of staff of the United States Air Force. Mm. See, the military is different, isn't it?
It is.
It's just, things happen.
Well, we probably need to back up though, because you went from the Navy.
Yes.
To.
I went to the Navy, enlisted. I was a machinist for at least 6. Then there was only 7. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. And then that ended in 44, 45?
No, I got out. I should have been out in 45 with the rest of them. But the machinist mate runs all the engine rooms in all the ships. And Truman froze for 6 months. So I came home in November and figured that they would send me to be discharged someplace. And they said, no, you get back to Oceanside, California. You're going to bring the troops on from the Pacific.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah.
So I get on this, they took a carrier, small carrier, escort carrier, we call it. It's got a flat deck, and right below it is a steel deck where all the aircraft are kept. And they welded 5-story bunkers in there for about 1,500 people. They could bring 1,500 people on that ship home. So we get on the ship, we get to Honolulu, we call Honolulu, Hawaii, and get a message. And they said, no, you are not going to be a troop retrieval ship. We're going to mothball you, and you turn around and go to South Boston Navy Yard for mothballing. So we didn't even get off the ship. We just turned around and came back, went through the Panama Canal.
Well, that was cool.
Oh, yeah. And I have pictures of all this.
And your brother wasn't with you when you were in the Navy?
Oh, no.
In the Navy, okay.
No, he was with me in 1950.
Okay, later.
He had taken ROTC, and the reason we had taken ROTC was they paid $27 a month. They gave you that much money just to be in ROTC and accept a inactive reserve officer. In March of 1950, they stood 500 of us up in the football field. Army, Navy, and Air Force, ROTC. Swore us in and put us in inactive reserve. And we all, forgot it. March went, April, May, and then June the 25th came. And that war started in Korea, and we decided to get in. And I said, oh no. But I needed 6 hours to graduate, and I put in a letter to waive it. I had 114 hours. It took 120 hours to graduate. And asked that they waive the 6. They wouldn't do it. They made me go to school here for 2 months, 1 hour a day, 5 days a week.
To take
1 hour a day.
What class did you take?
American literature and English literature. That's all. I forget what it was. It was literature, 2 classes. And I had to have it to get the 6 hours credit. Then I graduated on 1 August. And the Army called me and said, Walker, you get to an adjutant somewhere in Oklahoma, military, you get sworn in, and you are in the Army now.
Okay, well, before we get there, let's talk about your time at OAMC, Oklahoma A&M.
Oh, okay.
We need to talk a little bit about that.
All right. It's a wonderful adventure.
And you came in.
I came up here in January of 46.
46, okay.
Mm-hmm. I had finished my schools and I was bound and determined to make good grades and not do what I had done in 43 or 42 down at East Central. Well, I did pretty good. And I got in school and I came up here. I was tired of playing football at East Central. I'd had enough of that bull and everything. And Joannette was in school up here. So I thought I would just come up here and go to school because my younger brother he had played 1 year, and then when he turned 18, he was drafted, and he was discharged they had discharged him, and he was coming back on a football scholarship again. Yes, even though he had the GI Bill, he also had a football scholarship. And he was a starter for 3 more years, yeah.
And what was his name?
Billy Jean.
Billy.
Mother didn't name him William, she named him Billy.
Okay.
Okay. And Billy Jean Walker.
So where did you live when you first came?
I came up here, and I don't know how I talked to someone, and someone was with me. And we were looking, and I didn't want to stay in a dorm again. Mm-hmm. And I thought I would come up and just look around and see what was available. Where would I go to help me look for a place to stay. Somehow, I ended up in the Phi Delta Theta fraternity house. Now, it's set on the corner of Washington and what's now University.
Okay.
Now, there's nothing but a concrete slab. But it was a 3-floor American home. And the fraternity was living in there. I came up, somehow I went over there. A friend from my hometown of Pauls Valley, 3 or 4 of them, all had rotated being president of the fraternity. I went over to the Phi Delta Theta house and said, where's Joe Bailey? He said, we'll get him. Okay. There's my old buddy I was raised with. We went all the way to high school together. And he said, what are you doing up here, Luke? And I said, I'm looking for a place to stay. I'm through with East Central, and I'm coming up here because my younger brother's coming back, and he's a first-string football player. And he says, you can stay right here with us. I said, oh? He says, yes, I got a room for you. He says, bring your step up. He didn't tell me it was a fraternity house. We were old buddies. I'd known him all my life. His name was Joe Bailey Gibson, bless his heart. Anyway, I went down, got my clothes, and moved up here. And I was in that house for a week, and I said, you know, this is a fraternity. This is not just a public place open to people. And finally, Joe Bailey came one day and said, look, you ought to pledge your fraternity. You've been living here over a week now. I said, okay, all right, no problem. And I did. I pledged. And I was the very first pledge of that fraternity.
So it was new. That fraternity was newly established, charter?
Here, yes.
Yeah.
Phi Delta Theta is old.
Yeah, but the charter for here.
But the charter, they had been another fraternity, and they went to the Phi Delta Theta national headquarters, petitioned them to convert from some other fraternity to Phi Delta Theta, and they approved it. And all the current members then didn't have to go through nothing. They became Phi Delta Theta.
And as a pledge, what did you have to go through?
Nothing.
Nothing.
You must remember, up until 46 to 50, a large majority of all the college students were military veterans.
Yes.
And we didn't mess around. They didn't have to tell us something but once. And it was a different world. And then gradually over time, we ran out of former military and we ran into these young teeny boppers that had their idea about how things should happen. But no, it was really nice. In the military, we only say something one time and we don't have to tell you twice. No, and that's how we ran the thing. It was really pleasant.
Well, was there a house mother?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Do you remember her?
Yes, I have pictures. But where's my box?
What was her name? We'll look at it a little bit. Do you remember her name?
No, but it's written down.
Well, I was thinking, I looked, it was Lottie something, wasn't it? Lottie?
Real nicely.
Yeah. That's okay.
How any house mother can come up and put up with those young teeny bopper kids going to college is beyond me.
Well, I was reading something about sneaks, like dinner sneaks.
Right?
What was that?
I don't know. A dinner sneak.
It sounded like you might go to another fraternities and sneak in. I don't know.
It could have been.
Well, did you get thrown in Theta? Pond?
No. You know what we call Theta Pond. The only rubber bottom lake in Oklahoma. I shouldn't have said that. Excuse me.
If it is, it is.
Yeah, but that's what we're calling it.
So
now, you keep talking and I'm going to look for something in here real quick.
how long did you live in that house?
2 years.
So you weren't married at that time?
No. I did get married though. While I was in college, yes.
Okay.
And I married that young lady that Joannette had stayed at her room down.
Bunny.
Her name was Norma Lee Pike, and she was Creek Indian.
Okay.
One quarter Creek Indian.
And what were you majoring in?
What?
What was your major?
Chemistry. I had planned to try to go to dental school. And they had a complete program and everything. And chemistry was my major. But I got involved in photography. They taught photography then. And if you enrolled in it, you could go down and they'd give you a big stack of paper and chemicals to print it and fix it and everything. That came with a course, and the government paid for mine.
Oh, the GI Bill?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to school on the GI Bill. And
so you didn't live in Vet Village and would have been around about that time too, but since you were in the fraternity, you didn't have anything to do with that.
East Central freshman, 1942. There we are, in all our glory. I'm right there with them.
I was going to say, what position did you play?
I played end.
That second one's you? Which one's you?
Oh no, this is me right here.
Okay.
Second from the end. One or two of these boys got killed in the war. I forget which one it was.
And your helmets were leather?
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, let me tell you something really strange. When I was playing high school football, I went up to Oklahoma City to play in 1940, I think it was. And we had to stop and go to a sporting goods store and buy some real cheap helmets. Oklahoma passed a law in 1940 that you had to wear a helmet Up until then, we had kids playing football without a helmet. Yeah. And I think it was 40 or 41, Oklahoma passed the law. So we were going up to play Northeast in Oklahoma City, and we had some kids that didn't have helmets, so they went and bought these old cheap $2 ones, and that's a helmet, and put them on and wore them.
And your mother let you play without one?
Oh no, mother just helped. She thought it was too rough for her boys to play football, but we played football anyway. Unbelievable. And
So when you were in the fraternity, would they have dances?
oh yes, not only dances, we have what is called the Miami Triad, 3 fraternities that were formed originally at Miami University, and there's a Miami University in Ohio.
Oxford, yeah.
Miami, okay. And it's called the Miami Triad. It's Phi Delta Theta, Sigma Nu, and I think the Betas. Beta Theta Pi? 3 of us. We are the Miami Triad. And once a year, we had a triad dance. They still have it. I asked the boys over I said, you still have the triad dance? Oh yeah. Once a year, and it's called Miami Triad.
And could you dance? Could you have a rhythm?
Oh, a little.
A little.
Yes. And we had so much fun. Here in the 40s, until I graduated, and we didn't decorate homes. We only decorated a vehicle.
Oh, for a float or?
Yes, there was nothing, the homes were never touched. And we decorated vehicles.
So they had a parade?
Oh yes, a big deal, homecoming, you know. And the parade was 6 blocks long because everybody, fraternity and other people, had made decorated floats. And we paraded downtown in the floats and everything and came back down.
Do you remember any particular one you helped make?
All of them that I was there, yes, everybody came over and worked on making the float.
Was it with the steel chicken wire and pumping, or was it something different then? How'd you make them?
We made elaborate decorations, and thank God the people that was making the float knew how to build up everything and have a place for young ladies to stand, okay? And they knew, they had, someone in the fraternity knew how to do it. And we went down and bought all the paper and everything and decorated that float. And they had a contest, winner and second, all that. I think they still do. But now they decorate homes.
Yeah. And very elaborate, aren't they?
1.5 and 2 inch steel pipe. I had never seen anything like it. They put that down, then they put all of this stuff up and decorate those homes. I'd never seen that. That's what I get for being an old antique.
Did the fraternity ever win?
Probably do, or did.
Yeah.
I've never got to talk to that real nice house mother over there yet. And
So for homecoming football, did the women have corsages?
oh yes,
Flowers?
absolutely. They all had corsages. And it was nice.
It was.
And the corsages smelled good. And we just had a good time and enjoyed everything. I don't know why. There must be a reason that we did that.
Did the women wear dresses mostly?
Oh, yes.
Didn't wear pants?
And there was something else unique about entertainment here. The dances, everybody went to Perkins. Mhm. And amazing enough, the young ladies all had purses that you could put a fifth in. And you couldn't drink here in Stillwater. Man, they'd arrest you and get you out of here right now. So we all went to places in Perkins. We're getting down there, and the young ladies all were dressed up and everything, unzip their purses and take the fifth out and order the mixers. They don't do that now. Oklahoma's a wet state.
Yeah.
But we did that.
Was there a particular place in Perkins that you went to?
Yes, one place. They had 2 or 3 places, so, because all the fraternities did that. Went down there. And I keep thinking, Perkins Road was gravel when I went to school there. It was 2-lane gravel. Now it's 4-lane, it's the main street. But it wasn't that when I came to school. It was a gravel road.
And enough people had cars to get there?
Oh, yes. We had, one thing mentioned that. Bill Jones, a young man from Dallas, Texas, was a member of our fraternity, real nice. He had a beautiful red Dodge convertible. His dad had money, so he had a car and he had a red Dodge convertible. So, old Bill, he goes up there and marries one of these sorority girls. And what happened, I found out later, that his wife divorced him and married Andre Kostelanetz. You know who Andre Kostelanetz? He's a real famous Russian music conductor. He's Russian, Andre Kostelanetz. But Bill Jones's wife divorced him and married Andre Kostelanetz. Now that all happened a long time ago. It was weird. We didn't have hardly any married people, and 1 or 2 maybe. And I was married when I was in the fraternity, but there wasn't much in it. And what we did on the holidays, we serenaded the sororities. All of us went down as a group and serenaded Christmas songs at their sorority house. They called us the Singing Pies. How about that?
That's pretty neat. So you could carry a tune or try?
We could try, and the young ladies in the sororities just loved it. Yes, I don't think they even do that now.
I don't know. I'll have to ask.
Ask somebody to do that by asking them. And we really had a good time, and we had that Miami Triad dance was always a big deal. It was formal. And the last time I saw it, we had jokers. The guy had a tuxedo on, except he didn't have any pants on. And it was the Miami Triad dance. They were clowning. Yes, I saw the picture of him. He's standing there in a tuxedo with no pants on, dancing.
And where would the dance be?
They usually have it places here that's big enough to take them to dance.
Not in the student union? Well, it wasn't there yet.
There wasn't any student union.
Yeah, that wasn't there
The
yet.
first student union building was when I graduated, they had built quite a number of new buildings here, not a big, large number. They had just started building, and they had done real good because the population of the school was going up. And you must remember, there were no colored students allowed. Langston University, they called it, is just 20 miles down the road. But they had one colored girl. And she came to school, and I remembered seeing her. They wouldn't let her come in the classroom. She sat down in the doorway of the classroom, but they would not let her in the classroom. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Just different times.
She was a young black girl. And she was enrolled in the class, but they wouldn't let her sit in the classroom with her. Where people can be such fools.
That must have been Nancy Randolph.
I
I don't know. I think she was one of the first.
Was she?
Yeah, but
That
if you
was
remember,
her.
if you remember that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I was trying to remember the other day. My memory plays tricks on me. Sometimes I can remember minute details, and the next one is complete blank. I remember taking chemistry courses in an auditorium thing. It was 100 of us in the class, like a movie theater place.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a regular classroom. I forget where it was here on the campus. One of my chemistry classes. You walk in, it looked like they were getting ready to show a movie instead of having a class in chemistry. Yes. Years ago.
What about the library back at that time?
The library was different. Wasn't near as big as what we have now. And they progressed. The school slowly started building up stuff. They had, when I graduated in 50, they had 3 or 4 big buildings under construction. Yes. I worked for Mr. Osborne, and he had the contract to do all the individual photos in the annual.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a place down there in Washington, just a block off of what is university now. It used to be college. And I worked for him. And did weddings, photography and everything. I had a big 4x5 speed graphic. I had a developer, had a projector, paper. I could print my own 8x10s. I didn't need anybody's help. And I did. Anyway, one day, he sent me down to Shawnee, which wasn't too far from Oklahoma. From here, I had to go to Shawnee. He had a contract to photograph a roundup club, people on horses. They call them roundup clubs. And they're strung out 50 yards, sitting on their horses, you know. And the camera we had just made a sweep and then we printed, he did, on his equipment. I didn't have equipment that would print something that big, but I took the photographs. So I went down and when I came back, it was in June of 50. And when I first came into town, I looked over and the trees looked barren. And the next thing I did was a place where they had neon lights and everything. The lights were laying on the ground. I said, what in the hell is it? And I kept driving and it was worse. When I got up on the campus, they had some new buildings that they had put red clay tile on the roofs, and the tile was all laying on the ground. And I finally said, what's going on around here? And they said, look, we had the most bodacious ice storm you ever saw. They said the balls were 2.5 inches in diameter, and it just ruined everything. all the outside neon lights, it destroyed them.
Wow.
And he said the balls themselves were 2.5 inches in diameter. I still remember that. Now why I can remember that, I don't know, but I can.
Well, it's the visual too. You can see it.
Oh yeah, I could see it there. There was not one neon light still standing. It had all been crushed.
In June.
Yes.
So it would have been like a hailstorm. A
Yes.
hailstorm.
Yeah, but it was the biggest damn hailstones you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Now, he told me, he said, look, them all, they were big as a baseball, he said. Now, that's big.
That's big. Could do some major damage.
Oh,
Yes.
God, it beat everything down here. And it was in June of 1950. Now, we can go down to the news press and say, let me see your copies of the June 50 newspaper. And it would be in there showing it, you know. And it just beat it to pieces.
Well, since you took photographs, did you work for the newspaper for the school,
Oh, no,
for the
no, I
college?
worked for Mr. Osborne.
Okay.
And he had contracts. And I did weddings. I did the whole thing. Then I started freelancing and doing it for myself. I was making the money, not him. Yeah.
That's after you were married, or?
Yes,
Right.
I was, I was a junior when I got married. One January 19, I have to think a minute, excuse me, pardon-moi. And
1948,
I
maybe?
was married in 48. 1948.
And so did you move out of the fraternity when you got married?
Oh, yeah. Dad knew Dr. Bennett. And I told him one day, I said, Dad, I need a place to live up there. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. And he called Dr. Bennett and said, you find a place for my son to live. And he called back and he says, there's an office, you go over, they've got an apartment for you and Buddy. Yes. And I went back up there to see it. The apartments are gone. They were just little 3 and 4 bedroom. And it was in an L shape. And the football players got in there. And one other guy, my next door neighbor. And it was the things were built on concrete slabs. All the buildings are gone, but the concrete is still there. And that's where my place was. And Donald Schwartz, God, how can I remember his name? Donald Schwartz, he lived on the very end, and the little breezeway was just about this far between the apartments. And they were bigger than apartments. And one day I came by to see him, and he was gone. And I said, well, what happened to him? He says, Lou, they have opened up horse racing in Oklahoma City, and he can make a lot more money down there as a veterinarian than he can teach in school here. Yeah, he went down there and started being the doctor for the horses. Rather than, they just started the veterinarian school here in 46.
Okay.
I think it was 46. And several other things they started, but they did, hotel management. That was one in that big, nice building I told you about that they were just finishing when I left in 50. And they had started on construction of quite a bit of stuff. But I'll tell you, the buildings they built, the new ones and the old ones, those red tile roofs, the roofs were laying on the ground. Yeah. Hailstorm got them.
Yeah.
In June. So.
So you graduated in August of that year, you said?
August 1st, finally, after I'd been in school for 2 months, 1 hour a day.
What were your plans at that time if Korea hadn't happened?
I was ROTC. I was already commissioned. They, on 15 March of 50, they stood all the Army, Navy, and Air Force up.
But if you hadn't done that, what had you planned to do?
I was going to put in a photography store and do portrait work. I knew how to have people pose and the ladies to fix their hair. I've done so much for Mr. Osborne. I worked for him doing that.
So you would have had a major in chemistry, but you wanted to do photography.
I would have been I'd put in a photo store somewhere in Pauls Valley or someplace.
So instead you got sent to Korea?
Instead, the Army got me. That war started on 25th of June, and that changed my life forever.
Well, did Bunny go with you, or did she
She came to Japan. I went to Japan in the Repo Depot, we call it. The Repo Depot for personnel was right outside of Tokyo. It was a place called Camp Drake. It had been the headquarters for the 101st Airborne Division, and they just modified it. Beautiful place, ruined it. For instance, the Nipponese had built a beautiful big, and I have pictures of this, had built a beautiful big restaurant. Some of the seats were elevated, and we got that. But when I got to the Repo Depot, you only lasted 3 days. That's to check your inoculations, issue you winter combat gear, and I'd done it. And on the second or third day, Lieutenant Walker, would you please report to building so-and-so, room so-and-so, ASAP, as soon as possible. I thought, well, what the hell is this? So I get over there, and there's a guy sitting at the desk, and people talking to me. I said, I'm Lieutenant Walker. He asked, I report here. He says, we showed put up a book thing, and said, Lieutenant Walker, in accordance with Far East Command Regulation, so-and-so and so-and-so. No commissioned officer will be sent to Korea unless he has a minimum of 1 year active duty. You only have 3 months. You're not going. Would you please go find yourself a job? Next. And I thought, wait a minute, you're supposed to tell me. Now you tell me to go find a job. He says, you're not going to Korea. You want to be there. And it said, the Army, in their typical efficiency, forgot me. They didn't wait 9 months and said, okay, Walker, go through now. So I went down and called Bunny and said, hey, you can come to Japan. Okay, and this is who you got to see and contact. They will pay all your transportation all the way to the West Coast and everything. Because now the Army is responsible for me, and she's my wife. And they had to take care of her. And she came to Japan. And here came my younger brother, Billy Jean. And he had been just like me. We both took ordnance ROTC here and everything. And his combat tour was artillery. Mine had been armor. I was supposed to be fighting in armor in tanks for 3 years. Then I could be in my ordnance corps. His was artillery though, and he was in a 105 unit. So he came over, and I didn't see him when he came. I think he came with an organized unit who didn't come through these were just individual replacement officers that came through there. And we would replace the dead bodies. Okay. And Bill had come over there and went to Korea, and he got R&R. That's rest and relaxation. Okay. We call R&R, we call it something else. I can't say it.
Okay.
Okay. And Bill came over, and he called me and said he was coming to see Bunny and me for about 5 days. I said, God, come on, where have you been? He said, I'll tell you when I get there. And what had happened? Bill had come in with a unit, and he was a 105 artillery commander, platoon. He was a lieutenant, second lieutenant. And when he got over there, and they sent him on R&R, they sent him to a town other than Tokyo. It was Kyoto, I think, or someplace. And that's where he was supposed to go for 5 days and then get his butt back. Little brother is pretty sharp. He got to a typewriter, took his orders, and changed it, and had it read Tokyo. And went up and gave that to him and said, I want transportation to Tokyo. So he came and stayed with me and Bunny for 5 days. But he changed his orders and came right up there and stayed 5 days with us, and then he had to get on a plane and go back.
That wouldn't have gotten him in trouble?
No.
No.
My younger brother's pretty sharp, always has been. And he had some real tough jobs. He worked with, at one time, with people, we call them spooks. And that's the people you never see in the military who are spies and different things. We call them spooks. Okay. A nice, polite term. And Bill made good grades in college, and that's what saved him. Because our career branches made all assignments, had a copy of our college grades, and every time they make an assignment or something, they would go look at your grades. They would never send me to Command and General Staff School because my grade point average was a joke. The guy that selected us, a civilian, when I went to at Aberdeen, Maryland, the advanced ordnance school, I went in to see him. He had my college. He was laughing. He said, "Luke, how the hell did you graduate from college?" I said, "Well, wait a minute." I said, "I had a C average." "Yeah, you did." And 2 years later, the Army sent me to Syracuse University to attend a course, finance course, for 1 year, and I graduated with an MBA, Master's Degree in Business Administration.
In 1 year, yeah.
Yeah, 1 year. I had to go to school 2 months early because I had never taken any finance courses. And the people that they ran through it, the majority of us didn't have any finance education. So they had some courses from June to July we had to take. Then in August, the regular MBA course started. And Syracuse had a contract with the U.S. Army to run that school and educate those people. And there was another big group of young people there that was in a special organization that the president had set up. and I forget what they called it, is we would send these young people to foreign countries to help them out in financing and all that. And it's called something. I think they still have it. Anyway, Syracuse had a contract to educate those people too, of what the Army was shooting. And they were young people. You'd have thought they were students. Oh yeah, and what did they call that? Anyway,
Why had they sent you there?
no, that wasn't my course.
I know, but with the MBA, what were they wanting you to
Oh,
do?
the
with
one
it?
I went to, and then I got the MBA, was a course that financial officers, we have financial, that's a branch.
Okay.
The stuff they handle all the money, and they taught us of this for 1 year. And surprisingly enough, I had a B average, and I got an MBA. But I never served one day. You had to do a tour in a finance for 3 years if you went through that course. But my ordinance people called me and said, "Luke, we're going to send you to Washington, D.C. and be the project manager, staff officer for the Pershing missile system. You are not going to do a performance 3-year tour with the finance corps at all." I said, "Okay." I said, "What's Pershing?" They said, "Don't worry. You've got a top secret clearance, and we're going to send you to a school that's going to explain to you what Pershing is and what your job's going to be." And in 1954, to go to that school, you had to have a top secret clearance because they were going to teach and discuss in finite detail the construction and use of nuclear weapons and guided missiles. So I went down there in 54. Got my top secret clearance, and they trained me about the Pershing missile system. And the project manager was located in Redstone Arsenal in north central Alabama. Redstone Arsenal was where the 33 Germans were that developed all our missile systems that took people all the way to the moon. They were all at Redstone Arsenal, 35 of them. They had come over right after World War II with Dr. von Braun, the leader.
I recognize that name.
And he was there, and his family, and his 2 daughters, and they married Americans. He had 2 daughters, and he brought us, all of them ended up bringing their wives over. But there was about 30 of them, and they were all located at Redstone Arsenal. We call it Hunts Patch, Alabama. The Army's very unforgiving about some of the things that they say. Usually brutally frank. But
So did you spend some time there?
oh yes, I spent 4 years
In
Alabama.
In Alabama.
Every time I'm supposed to be going first I was ready to go to the Advanced Ordnance Corps School, which was my career branch. I'd taken the basic in 53 and then the advanced. But every time I would get ready to go to school, the advanced school, he would find another new job for me to do. And I ended up being the construction advisor for the guided missile school itself in Huntsville. It was built on Redstone Arsenal. It was 5 classroom buildings and then 5 shop buildings where you could disassemble all the missiles and teach. We use it to teach. And the classroom buildings were for student classes. When And someone called and said, "Look, one of these days the Artist Corps is going to tell you to forget it. If you don't get that colonel to quit taking your name off the list to attend the Ordnance Advanced class. You've been taken off 3 times now." So I called him and said, "Don't you pull me again. I've already been warned. And you make the assignments. And you quit letting Newhall here assign me." And it was kind of unique. Before I got to Redstone, I was working in St. Louis, Missouri, in an ammunition manufacturing facility we had, where they made they made all the rifle. We didn't make any pistol ammo, and we made 105 projectiles for the 105. And I got an ammunition MOS, we called it, military occupation specialist, from it, that lived with me for 30 or 20 years every time they looked. That's how I went to Vietnam as the chief of the ammunition conventional. And I'm saying, "I'm nukes and missiles. Why are you making me go back with this antique stuff now again?" So the military, we get to know each other, and we bicker at each other and scream at each other.
But you made it a career.
Oh yes. I think in '56, I was at Redstone and things were calm and pleasant and everything. And I'd been in the service on active duty 6 years. And I said, well, I might as well just stay with it, because a lot of the people were getting out and getting jobs of different kinds. And I said, I might as well just stick around and let's see what's going to happen. And the way it worked out, it came up pretty good for me, I think. And that 4 years I spent in Huntsville, Alabama, I came out talking just like him. One day, someone said, "Look, what part of the South are you from?" And I said, "I'm not in the South. I'm from Oklahoma." And he said, "Man, you wouldn't know it from hearing you talk. You're from the South." And I spent 4 years down there and talked just like them.
I love to hear them talk. They sound like me.
Oh, I've cleaned it up pretty well.
You moved a lot of times, so from St. Louis to DC to Alabama to Japan.
I did move quite a bit.
And Bunny moved each time. Did you have children?
No, I never had children.
That was easier than to move.
I had her go to a doctor to check her, and they said she needed a small operation. They did it, and they said I was perfectly normal. But I said, "Why don't I have children?" He says, "Well, you better check with your wife, because we checked your sperm and there's nothing wrong. But something is, I never had children. And I had a lot of fun, boy." I didn't say that.
Right.
But I really had a good time in the military. I had good jobs. When I became the project manager, staff officer for the Pershing missile system, the manager of the project was in Redstone with all his people. But they all had to have a representative in Washington, D.C. who could talk to people and keep you out of these top secret messages and mindless stuff. So I was in a big room, and our headquarters was at the National Airport, Washington, D.C. And there's 15 of us in that one big room of project managers, staff officers, because we had PMSOs for all the big major Army projects. Army, see, we got engineers, signal, quartermaster, they all had people up there. And I was there for, I guess, 2.5 years. And they called me in one day and said, Luke, we got orders for you to go to Vietnam. And I said, okay, I can handle that. It's about time. And they said, well, we could probably get you out of it. I said, don't touch it. That's bad luck. Leave it alone. Let things go. When I went over to Vietnam, well, it required a bird colonel, full colonel. We got half colonels, lieutenant colonels, and then colonel, full colonels. The job that they couldn't find any conventional ammunition officer in OS in the rank of colonel. So they had lieutenant colonels, like myself, that had the MOA. So they went to commanding general of the U.S. Army and said, here's a list of names and qualifications. We have no 06 bird colonel. You'll have to take one of these lieutenant colonels. And he picked me.
And that was a good thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good thing?
Yes.
And that was a positive thing?
Oh, yes. Lucky, we call it BSL, blind, stagger, and blind. Very scientific, blind, stagger, and blind. Anyway, I went to Vietnam. And my supervisor, the G4, who I worked for, was the most obnoxious asinine. He was insulted that he didn't have bird colonels working for him. He had to accept me. I'll admit, one day, I thought about shooting him. He was just obnoxious. Finally, he left. And we had a big celebration. However, when I was working, I found out that when I got there, the chief of the ammunition division, the full colonel, had a car assigned to him 24 hours with a driver. He had a little mobile home he lived in with a comfort nurse with him. And first thing they did to me when I got there, and said, look, Walker's just a lieutenant colonel, take his car. And don't let him go over there and live in those mobile homes either. So I lived in a barracks. But it was only for 1 year.
And where was your wife at that point, though?
Oh no, I'm in Vietnam fighting a war.
So
no wives are over there.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Well, no,
She
not
was on the home front.
Oh yeah, she was home and I was over in Vietnam. I got R&R. I had 2 of them. It was 5 days. I don't know how I got 2, but I did. And when this asinine G4 left, we got a quartermaster officer in to be the G4. When he was nice and pleasant, scared to death of ammunition. Quartermaster don't go near ammunition. But he's the G4 and he's got ammunition under him. He's got all the tech services are under the G4. Signal, quartermaster, okay, all the ordnance, engineers. And I got in there and this worthless colonel had left. Thank God. So I don't see why somebody had already shot him before I got there. He was that bad. But they had. And went to work, and I traveled quite a bit. If we had an ordnance problem with any ammunition, illumination rounds, mortars, anti-tank weapons, anything. I would go find a chopper going in that place and go see what the problem was. I did not stay in the headquarters all day long and then go home and go to bed and come back the next day. I was out and I traveled. And we were doing pretty good. And one day I got a message from the commanding general, who was a major general of the 3rd Marine Amphibious Forces. Now, in Vietnam, there's a real thin stretch of land up there where it joins North Vietnam, and the infiltration was. And he wanted to put a stop to that. He said, they're just going over into Cambodia, coming down all the way. They sent all the people down there they wanted. And you had to be very careful at night. And they had just built a brand new Army headquarters. We were at the airport at Saigon, in a building where Army headquarters. And they went about 12 miles out, built us a typical red brick, big Army headquarters, put a fence around it and everything. They also fenced in the monkeys when they did that, and the snakes. They had animals over there. They had gar that's big as a buffalo, but it's called a gar. And they're wild. They're jungle animals. And I got over there and said, okay, I'm going to change the procedures a little bit. If we've got a real bad problem for ordnance, ammunition, I want to go see it myself and discuss it with the people that it happened to. And sure enough, we had a short round one day that had been fired, and they were firing over their own American troops for a short range, and then but it had fired over the American troops and killed some of them, our own ammunition. So usually what we would do, we would suspend from issue and use that item right then. But we couldn't shut the whole army down. They gotta have something to fight with. So I went up there to see what had happened and checked in, told the unit commander who I was, and that I wanted to check with the people who had fired that round that was short. And he looked a little surprised. He said, okay. I said, just for my own knowledge, I said, I have the authority to suspend every round of this ammunition from issue and use in Vietnam, and I don't want to do it. You'll stop everybody else from using it. He said, okay. So I went over and talked to him. And when I got there, I said, well, this looks a little funny because the mortar ammunition was in real nice, expensive, like thick cardboard boxes this long. And it had a seal to unspray it, pull it out, completely waterproof. You could throw it in the water as long as you kept the top on it. And you still pull the top out. Right. What these kids had done, they had taken this ammunition and pulled the cover off of the rear where the propulsion munition was in little clear plastic bags and let the rainwater get on it. I said, oh God, I said, you gotta let them dry in the sun and hope. And you put those tops, it takes 2 seconds to pull the top off. But you ruin the ammunition that we spent a fortune making by leaving it off and letting the powder charges get wet. They won't work. Okay. You know, this is just one of the things that got me. And the next thing that came in, the commanding general, Marine Corps, came in 3 maps, says, I have a plan to interdict all of the North Vietnamese coming in. I want to shoot 2,000 rounds a day of 175 millimeter gun. Can you support me for ammunition? And he sent the message into U.S. Army headquarters, and I got the message for answer. I said, oh God, surely he's got somebody that can read a tech manual. And if you read the tech manual on that gun, it's a very expensive to make heavy gun. It shoots nuclear rounds. You can shoot a nuclear round right out of it. And what they had done was asked, could I support the ammunition? In the tech manual, it says you can shoot 346 rounds through each 175 gun tube. After that, you will never fire another round through that gun tube for any reason. And I said, man, I don't believe this. And so I went up to the commanding general of the Marine, and I looked over and he had his stamp there, because he'd signed a message that they prepared. And I said, if you will read the tech manual on your 175 gun, of which you have command and control of a whole battalion, 12 of them, of those guns, under your OPCON, you can only fire 346 rounds out of that tube. And you can never fire another round. All those firing tables are invalid and safety. And he looked at me, and he turned around and looked at his people who had got him to sign it. And I said, you know, for 2,000 rounds a day, that's 6 rounds a day. That's 6 tubes a day. Tubes are big, long, and heavy. It will take a while. The ammunition, we have an ammunition plant in St. Louis. Will take us 1 year to go back into production and produce your 175 HE rounds. And the general just, I looked at him, he just shook his head. And he thanked me profusely for coming up there. And I didn't say, I'm not answering your stupid message. I never did. And he never came with a follow-up saying, will you please respond to my message? He never did send a follow-up message to me. And my general friend thought I had done that. That I didn't want to embarrass that general. Even though he's a Marine Corps general, he was a major general. And everything, only people that knew what was said was me and his staff. And he never did send me a follow-up message saying, reply to my message so-and-so. In the military, what they do, if we go on a universal time, I forget the exact name of it, where the clock is in England and all messages are timed to that clock. So it's different. It's 7 hours, 8 hours from ours. And there's a word for it. But all military messages use that system of putting time of the message on it. Okay, you're learning about the military now.
Yeah.
So we can check to say, when was that message out or something, you know. We can all be reading the same book.
Don't have to figure if it's Eastern Standard or Central.
No, none of that crap. Because all the military forces use that time system. In fact, if you go into a place, there is usually a clock on the wall set to that universal. And the master clock is in England. So there's 24 hours difference around the world. Anyway, I survived.
It's a long way from Durant.
Oh, God. And my general had left in October. And I think I showed you that medal. He awarded me the Legion of Merit. It was the highest award he could give me. Put in a request that I be assigned to Desk Log G4 of the United States Army, that he became the commanding officer of in the Army General Staff in the Pentagon. And apparently he got into a zissing contest with my Ordnance Corps people, who makes all the selections. It's their job. I mean, they have Office of Personnel Operations, and because all the jobs have a rank and an MOS. So it'll be a lieutenant colonel, a colonel, a combat infantry, a engineer, ordnance or something, you know. But your career management branch makes a selection. And when General Engler came back to the States, and he was a desk log of the United States Army, got a promotion, he's a lieutenant general now. He requested that I be assigned to him. Upon my completion, I didn't get through till January of '67. And my Ordnance Corps branch went back to the general and said, Lieutenant Colonel Walker cannot serve on the Army General Staff. You must have attended Command and General Staff College in order to serve on the Army General Staff. Well, they were talking to the wrong general. When General Engler got through with him, I have a copy of the letter in my files here. To me, it starts off, after voluminous correspondence back and forth, you are assigned to Command General Staff to Desk Log, United States Army. I still have the letter. It's just clear as a bell. After voluminous correspondence, but I don't know what they got into, but I know Engler won because I went and served on the Army General Staff.
Okay.
I was young. Everything was new and different to what I'd ever been exposed to. And I'd never been more than 120 miles away from home, because it came from Pauls Valley in 1940 to Stillwater to play in the state baseball championships. I'd never been out of Oklahoma. Never been anywhere. There wasn't a lot of travel. It was expensive then. Not everybody had $50,000 cars or anything like that, like we do now.
Mm-hmm.
And it all worked out. And I tried to behave nicely. I still remember we were right out of San Francisco at a place called San Bruno, waiting for our unit to go overseas. And I caught guard duty for 4 hours on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. I was walking guard from midnight to 4 when I was in the Navy. And why I can remember that now, there's so many things I can remember. It's just, you know, some things I can't remember.
Well, it was a time you would have been out having fun.
Oh yeah,
instead of on guard.
you know, sailors were well known for that. And we had quite a reputation. I know the first time I was in boot camp and I got we got to go on Liberty, we call it, to San Diego. I was on a bus going downtown and opened the door to get off, and it was in a residential area too. there was a big sign in the yard. And the sign said, "No sailors, dogs, no sailors, dogs, or something else permitted on this property." No, Okies. No sailors, Okies, or dogs permitted on this property. And I had 2 out of 3. I was a sailor and an Okie boat. And there it was, right in the war. They had put that sign up in that yard. It didn't bother me. I learned don't sweat the small stuff is what we say.
Well, did someone actually call you an Okie while you were in
Oh
California?
yeah, we didn't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
People have been calling me Okie all my life. I don't ever see a reason in what they don't tell you though, is the Okies that they talk about that went to California from Oklahoma had moved to Oklahoma from Tennessee. They were not native Oklahomans. They were in Tennessee and different places. They moved to Oklahoma, then they moved to California. But they were called Okies.
A lot of them came back.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I had an uncle, Bill Alley, who was insurance salesman. But he wanted to get in the trucking business. And he bought trucks and was hauling stuff, continental wise. And he wasn't in it but a couple of years, and he quit and went back to selling life insurance. And I said, "What happened, Bill?" And he said, "Look," he said, "I couldn't keep them from stealing my tires. And tires, truck tires, are very expensive." So he just quit. Went back to, he spent his whole life selling life insurance. And my mother had 4 sisters and 1 brother. And all of them were rather successful, our sisters and everything. Uncle Bill did good, and his son, Billy Jack, went to school at OU, graduated right after the war, got married to a young lady in St. Louis, and was raising a family, and did extremely well. I remember being in Indiana and calling him, and he was over at the capital there of Indiana at Christmas. And his wife and 4 daughters. He had 4 daughters, never had a son. And they said, "Look, where are you and Buddy?" I said, "We're over here, Rhode, just 100 miles from you. I'm a commanding officer of a ammunition plant. He, come have Christmas with us." So Bunny and I went over there at Christmas with him. He was the president of a life insurance company at that time. Later, he got to investing in money and everything. And he ended up having a share on Wall Street. He bought and sold in the millions. He's my cousin. I said, "Billy Jack, you rascal." And he did. He made money just unbelievable, you know. You don't get a chair on Wall Street by wanting to do it. You have to be very smart or damn lucky, excuse me.
Yeah, or a little both.
And he made, and bless his heart, his wife went on vacation with their son because the lady he married after he lost his first wife, she had a son. They'd gone somewhere and come back, and Billy Jack had had a heart attack and died. He was dead in their bedroom after all that. Let me tell you, life is very, very it's hard to find a word just what life is literally like. But you never know.
Well, at 94, you sure don't know. You were going to tell us about going in the brig, being put in the brig.
Oh, yeah. My commander, I forgot what I had done. It was something stupid. And he, in the Navy, in the Navy they have punishment levels. You don't have to go to a court-martial. A unit commander has what is called captain's mass, and he can give you a certain level of punishment. Now, if you really have fouled up somewhere and they have to have a court, well, that's for the stuff that's really bad. And anyway, I'd done something. And I can still remember Lieutenant Alexander saying, "Look, I can't let you off for free. 5 days in the brig, okay?" You're in the brig for 5 days.
And what would that entail, being in the brig?
Oh,
I don't know.
it can really be mean how they treat the people in the brig.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they treat them and everything is not advertised. They're not nice sometimes. And he threw me in the brig when we were in New Guinea. He had a brig down there. To give you some idea, when I walked into the brig where they were going to lock me up and everything, the officer sitting there said, "You see that white dot up above? Put your eyes on it and don't take him off of it." Well, so he's saying, "You look up there, don't you look at me, you keep your eyes on that dot." You see what they do?
Mm-hmm.
And I was in there 3 days, and that's when they said, "No, this is the wrong place, we've got to go further north." They came over and got me and 2 other people that was in the brig with me. But they're not nice to you. They don't mess with you. And they only say it one time.
Well, would you have been by yourself in a room? I mean, like solitaire?
Yes, they have solitaire. And I've never been in solitaire, but that must be cruel to me. Because they put you in a place by yourself, and sometimes it's dark, and leave you. When there's no bedding, you're expected to sleep on the floor. You want to sleep, lay down. The military don't mess around sometimes. Well, you've got this guy that they say killed himself. That was a multi-millionaire up in New York. What was his name? You know what I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Yes.
Now they're saying he was murdered. But the way things are now, I call TV trash vision.
Yeah.
The stuff that they give you on that is just, some of it's pretty decent, but you never know when they're lying. You can't tell.
Not anymore.
No way you can tell. And since I live by myself, I spend quite a bit of time watching television. Now I won't watch it late at night because that stuff is in your head. And they do have good stuff on TV now. But just given the news and stuff, they can say anything they want to and then make an excuse. Look what they tried to do to Trump. He just laughs at them. They finally met their match. Trump just looks at him and laughs, I think. My dad was a devout Democrat.
In Oklahoma back in those days, that was the case, yes.
And he remembered 29 see, I was 4 years old when we had the Depression. And one night, we played bridge at home at night. When Dad comes to the cafe, we go home and play bridge. My older brother and me, and our younger brother and mother and I was kidding Dad about the Democrats, something they'd done. Dad said, well, Luke, if you feel that way about the Democrats, you can get out of my house. And I thought Mother was going to faint. Yeah. Dad was a devout Democrat. Well, that's his heart. Worked hard all his life.
He would have had trouble voting for Henry Bellman then?
The what?
When Henry Bellman ran for governor he was the first Republican.
Right.
Right? Your dad probably didn't vote for him then?
Oh, no. Dad was a campaign manager for Mike Monroe, a United States congressman from Oklahoma. My dad was his campaign manager for Garvin County.
Okay.
Yeah, he was into it. Boy, he was a Democrat like you would. But Mother just like to fainted when he said that. You feel that way about Democrats, you could stand up. Mother was just floored. I'd just been home from the service. And I still remember. I said, well, your Democrats was still selling scrap iron to the Japanese right up until December of 41, and still killing us when the war was over. And I said that the Democrats did that. Man, he came out there like, he didn't really mean it. We had a really good family, very close.
Well, did you write back and forth when you were over in New Guinea or when you were in World War II? Did you,
Yes,
write
we
home?
had 1 page in the Navy. We had little 1-page letter things where you could write, and it was real easy to censor because all our mail had to be censored to make sure we had done something. So if you put it in a letter and sealed it, they cut it open and read it and initialed it. It had been read by an officer. And we put up with it.
Yeah.
I learned to live with it. What I had done to get in the brig wasn't too brilliant. Because underneath the stamp, I had written Guadalcanal. And they put the stamp on. And of course, they put it up to the light and everything when they read it. And that's why they put me in the brig for 5 days. Look, you told your parents we were in Guadalcanal. Okay. And I was young. And I got promotions quick. Some of the old salts just couldn't believe that some of us young people came in and got promoted so quick because the military in 1943 created another rating and enlisted. You go fireman 3rd, fireman 2nd, fireman 1st, machinist 2nd. Okay? And there was no machinist 1st. So in 43, after 300 years, the Navy changed it and created the rank machinist 3rd class. You go in fireman 1st, machinist 3rd, machinist 2nd, okay. And they had never had the young man who was supposed to change our ranks. I was a fireman 1st class, enlisted, That's just three or four times from the location from the bottom to the top. He misread it. And he thought it was changing us, our ranks, from fireman first to machinist second. So he published it and put it on the bulletin board. And David Alexander signed it, the unit commander. And somebody finally went up there and said, "You blithering idiot. They just created machinist mate third class. And the typist didn't understand it. So he promoted us from fireman first to machinist second instead of machinist third." And Lieutenant Alexander said, "I'm not changing it.
But you didn't get
Leave
demoted.
it alone."
You didn't get demoted again.
No, I didn't get them. I got promoted. I couldn't believe I was in E5 and I'd only been in the Navy 8 months. And neither could the old salts believe it. That I'm a machinist mate second class and I've only been in the Navy 8 months.
And you're barely 18.
Yeah,
You started at 17.
I'd only been 18 for 8 months then. My birthday's in March. And it was entertaining at times, you know. When we look back at things, you look back with all the knowledge you have gained since you were in a situation. And it's different.
You'd change a few things? Would you change a few things?
Oh, yes. But you can't go back in time and change anything. What is this old saying? The Persians have a saying about that, of trying to change things. And I'm in one of my remission modes now. Wonderful bit of poetry about you cannot go back and change anything. And I can't remember, it was a verse written by a real famous Persian writer. And he had written this in his words that, hey, if you lived it and done it, that's the end of it. You are not going to go back and change anything. And he had written a poem that if you can keep your head when all about you, and if you can keep your head when all about you are blaming you, if you can walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. That is a poem called If. It's beautiful. Rudyard Kipling wrote it. You should find it and get a copy of it.
I will look it up.
The name of it, Rudyard Kipling wrote it. And it's called If.
Okay.
You will be surprised when you read that. It's a short poem, but it's got so much stuff that's just right through it. If. And I used to know a lot of things because Maggie Martin in high school taught English literature. And when I was going in high school, even then, you could choose a certain amount of courses. And I chose English literature. Little did I know what Maggie Martin was going to do. Every Friday, we get through, I went to her class 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. She'd say, have this ready for Monday, and I will call for someone to recite it. And give us a whole thing of memory work. Yeah. And I learned so much stuff memorizing it.
That probably helped when you learned languages. You said you spoke, spoke 5 different kinds.
It helped a lot with those languages because languages are tough. You get to a certain age and your head doesn't absorb stuff so quick and easy. It's when you're younger and your head is much more nimble. Mm-hmm.
So what are the 5 languages you speak?
I speak first Nippon, And the ugly Americans call it Japanese. We're idiots. They don't call us. Nobody else in the world except the Brits and the French call them Japanese. They call themselves Nipponese. They call their home country Nippon. I learned that when I was in Japan. That, hey, they don't really understand and they resent you calling them Japs. Mm. The next is what we call Germans. The Germans don't call themselves Germans. They call themselves Deutsch. That's right. They look at you and laugh. You say, okay, you use that word German. That is a Roman word, Germany. It goes all the way back to Roman times. And I learned that first thing when I was in Berlin. They don't call themselves Germans, they call themselves Deutsch. You better learn it and remember it. And I did. And then, let's see, I went to Germany and then I went to France to Orléans. We call it Orleans. The French don't call it Orleans, they call it Orléans. And in Orléans is a very famous French lady, warrior lady. And you've heard of her, Jeanne d'Arc. Okay, she fought the Brits in the 14th century. She was a warrior. So the great Americans, we've got a big headquarters in Orléans, and there's a big statue of Jeanne d'Arc on a horse. So the Americans named the statue Joni on the Pony. Typical Americans, I'm telling you. And there was another lady, I never did figure out who she was a lady sitting in a chair kind of bent over that was right close to that statue of Jeanne d'Arc. And we called her Dottie on the Potty. And the French hated us. We poked fun at their heroes. Yeah. We do. You have to admit it. And we can't get anything straight to not calling the Japs Nipponese, which they do. And there's something interesting about that. The Nipponese will not issue a visa for people to come into their country to any Muslim. Does that tell you something? To me, the Muslims are an insult to the human race. Now, I know the sweet little mothers with sweet little kids. And, I don't buy into that. Not for me. I spent 1 year in a Muslim country called Iran. And, that's a different world.
Yeah, you were saying on the phone that you spent some time in Ethiopia.
Yes. I went down to Ethiopia in 1974. And I was in the European headquarters of UCOM. Was a headquarters. And they had Army, Navy, and Air Force in the headquarters. And we had Europe, Africa, and Asia to India of our area of responsibility and for anything military, because we had what we call MAGs, military aid and advisory groups, people right there with them, like I was in Iran, to show them how to repair a tank when the guy you're talking to try to train him had never had a piece of metal in his hand in his life. Gets interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, learned all the languages I could. I learned, I think I told you, Iran does not call themselves Iranians. They call themselves Farsi, F-A-R-S-I. They're Farsis. They look at you and laugh if you call them Iranian. But that's what we do. Iranians, the Farsis. And we had it was kind of unique. They have water, but it's not normally piped into your home. What they do for water is open everything for the main streets, especially. Right beside it is a walk. 2 feet over is a concrete thing, 3 feet wide and 2 feet deep, running water. And that's their water for anything they want. You want to take a bath, you got to go out and get the water out of it. It's called a jube. Those water troughs. And this is the way we talk to each other who had been to Iran. You were a jube jumper? Yeah. We called each other jube jumpers because the water troughs were called jubes. Leave it to the Army to come up with an acronym. And we did.
Yeah, it's a secret lingo.
Jube jumper.
Well, in Ethiopia, that was in 1974. That was about the time the changeover.
I was there. I had gone to. What's the name of that country? Damn. I was going to a country in Europe in 73. And I was at the airport, I checked my baggage, and Jordan, I was going to Jordan because there is that city of Petra. You've seen it, carved in pink stone, a whole town. I talked to my buddies down there and said, hey, I'm going to get some TDY, but I want to go to Petra. And they said, look, you get down here, we'll take you anywhere you want to go. Because I was in their higher headquarters there at UConn. I got to the airport and checked my baggage. Lieutenant Walker, please pick up the house telephone. I said, this is Luke, what's going on? Pat Reagan, we're the Navy commander, works in my office. He said, Luke, I'm glad we got you, you're not going anywhere. And I said, what the hell do you mean? I said, I already got my baggage checked. He said, you're not going there. You get your butt back out here just as soon as you can. And I said, Pat, what's going on? He says, Luke, it's classified, and I'm not about to tell you over this phone. Well, when I got back out there, I think it was 73, the Arab countries around Israel had all jumped on Israel. It happened. And we were in it tooth and tongue because most of the Israeli ammunition and weapons were ours. And I was a representative, and since I got to wear the big Army General Staff Identification, they gave me all these jobs. They said, you go over there, okay, thanks. So I went back out there. What a mess. Then we got a message one day in 74 from the MAG, Military Aid Advisory Group. We had a officer had a BG and about 100 people down in Ethiopia because we had sold them so much American equipment, and we had people down there to help them. And they had to request their funding at a certain time to fund everything they did. And they requested that we send someone down to Ethiopia to help them plan, program, and budget every year so there's no slowdown, no mistakes. So myself and another lieutenant colonel went down to brief them on how to do this. We get down there and they put us in a real swanky hotel at the airport. And I didn't really understand till I'd been there for a day. They sent a car in the morning to pick us up, and we would do our briefing stuff. Then they would let the driver drive us around in Addis Ababa. Okay. We get down there, been there 3 days. And I got a phone call in the morning. And he said, "Luke, don't worry about it. We'll get you out of here as soon as we can." I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He says, "Can't tell you right now, but the car will come in and get you a little later." But he said, "There's been a big thing happen." So I said, "All right." So we waited. Pretty soon, here come a car, sit down. And he finally told us that the military had taken over Ethiopia. They had arrested the prime minister and everybody and his whole family. And they had told him, what was that emperor's name from Ethiopia? A little short guy, just
Haile, Haile.
Haile Selassie. Okay. What had happened? The army had went in, captured Haile Selassie and his entire family and any relative and put them in a building. And they told him that we know you have taken our money to Switzerland and invested it. And we'll give you 3 days to get it back out of there. And if you don't, we're going to kill a member of your family in front of you every day late they are. Yeah. Now, that's brutal. Well, let me tell you, that's brutal as hell. Mm-hmm. Kill a member of your family right in front of you every day to get that money back out there. Well, I think little Haile Selassie got off his dead ass and got to working because they had never changed. They never had royalty ruling Ethiopia since. The military runs Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we got on a plane and came back to Stuttgart, and it was October. And I had 55 days of leave. And it was 1974. And I only had 29 years of service. But I put in my retirement papers. The day I got back, I filed for retirement, took my 55 days leave, and left. I said, that's twice. I went. I was going to the other place I told you about, that I was going to go see this town that they carved in the paint. Mm-hmm. And I said, that was the first one. Now this has happened. And you tell me that I'm going to stay in the Army another year? You are whistling Dixie, buddy. And I put in my retirement papers. I said, I'll never draw a day of my retirement if there's something's going to happen to me.
How old were you at that point? I was trying to do
I
the
was
math.
49, I think.
So not quite 50.
No, I wasn't 50. 75, I would be 50. I was born in 25. So in 75, on my birthday. I would have been 50 years old. But I retired 1 January 75, and I got home 3 months before my birthday.
You definitely had time for a second career.
Oh, I was still a little young, and I had my second career was being a judge in international competition of shotgun shooting. Mm-hmm. And enjoyed it. Had a lovely home we built. And
then what brought you here to Stillwater?
I have a sister-in-law here. My younger brother's wife lives here. She moved here with Bill when he came here in 46 or 47. And they had 5 children, and 2 of them still live, 2 of her children, my niece and nephew, still live in Stillwater. Patty, she didn't come over today. I invited her to come, but she's not feeling good. Patty is here, and she does very well. I don't know, she was a nurse for 22 years. And where she learned computers, I have no idea, but she did. And she works for a company that computerizes hospitals. And she does it with her. She has 4 people on her team. And she usually leaves on Sunday and comes back on Thursday. She's 64 and she's tired of it. And she can retire when she's 65. Patty's big. She's like my younger brother. She weighs 270 pounds, but she's not fat. She's big. Typical my younger brother's children. And Patty, I had invited her to come over today. And she's had a knee replacement. And I think probably her weight had a little something to do with it. But she's not fat. She's just big. And there's another girl. The boys are not that big. But 2 of my brother's girls are big.
That's just the way it is sometimes.
Boy, she is.
So you've got family here that brought you.
Oh yeah, I have my sister-in-law, Mary Lou. She was 89 last month. And she was a good Catholic girl. She gave my brother 6 children. 1 died when he was young. And she's here. And Patty and John are here, 2 of Bill's children. And if I went to Paul's Valley, I wouldn't know a living soul. Mm-hmm. I never had children. So where are you going? And
so you came here 4 years ago?
The what?
You came here 4 years ago?
I think it's 4 now. I came here, this is 17.
This is 19?
This is 19. Mm-hmm. So that means I would have come here, it's either 4 or 3.
Okay.
I'm going to have to ask my sister-in-law. I stayed with her for a month when I moved here, and then found a permanent place to stay.
And you came from Omaha to
Omaha,
here?
Yes. I was living in Omaha because Joe, my wife, had 3 children living there. And she had the first stages of dementia. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to be near her children. So we gave away our house in Colorado Springs and moved to Omaha.
I'm thinking the weather's a little bit better here than there.
The weather there can get quite different and severe.
Do you still drive?
I drive only to breakfast.
Okay.
The nicest thing happened the other night. That's how that lady got hold of you. I drove over there, and at 5:30 it was dark. And I had told those kids, And I think they offered to come pick me up and bring me back. And I said, no, it's daylight. Well, yeah, when I drove over there. And an hour later, it's dark.
Uh-huh.
So what they did, and that house mother is a super lady.
Yes, she is. She is.
What they had done, I told them they couldn't believe my card. I have to show that to you. I'm the first pledge of that fraternity.
No, I'll have to take a picture of it before you put it up.
Okay.
So which one of the pins is your fraternity pin?
Oh, none.
None?
I don't know what ever happened to my pin. I have when I was a pledge, they're called Phi. I still have it, but whatever happened to my pin? The only one, I think I told you, Neil Armstrong's got the pin.
Well, so what are these pins?
Okay, this one here is Honorable Service Discharge from World War II.
Okay.
It's not very rare, there's about 14 million of them. This is my Army General Staff identification, a miniature. It's that big.
Yeah.
Now, the Army apparently had very good trouble with assigning people to the General Staff. And what they did is you could be assigned to the General Staff. You could not wear the identification until you had survived there in that job for 1 year. How about that? You know, usually when you go into a unit, you put on the insignia. They call this an identification, not an insignia. So a year after I'm there, I've got a letter here. It says, 1 year is up, and I may wear the Army General Staff.
You passed probation.
Yes. But I'm going to send this card back. I'm going to give this back to the fraternity with that Phi pin and let them have it. I don't have any children. What would I do with this card? There's the card there.
Yeah. But
And
you kept
those
it.
kids over there, young people, when I whipped that card out and showed it to them and they saw that number, the closest guy there, his number was 246, 247. And I had scribbled on the back of that for some reason.
So where's the number?
Right here, bond number 46.
46.
Right there, it says it.
46.
It's hard to read.
Okay.
Then they say bond number.
Yeah.
See that, the other 45 had been another fraternity. And they petitioned Phi Delta Theta and became a Phi Delta Theta. So none of them were ever pledges.
Okay.
They were made instant members. I come in and I'm a pledge. So, and I was the 46th member of the fraternity.
And how many pledges were there the year you were there?
I'd say, I have pictures of them, and I think there was 12 or 13.
So that's probably about normal.
There wasn't that many people in fraternities.
Yeah.
Nothing was that big. The school wasn't that big.
Did you have classes in Quonset huts?
Yes. And people, where the heck was it? I think they put some Quonset huts up for people to live in.
Yeah, out in Vet Village.
Yes, that village.
Veterans Village.
I'm sure it's gone now.
Yeah, it's gone.
And what was out there? Temporary housing of some kind, wasn't it?
Yeah, Quonsets plus
Okay.
wooden frame buildings that they had brought in
Okay.
that were small.
Yes. because married people wanted, that was married people.
Mm-hmm. And more mature at that point, too, after they'd served.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Things have changed. And when I first started college, a large number were ex-military.
Yeah.
Well-disciplined, had no problem with it. You never had a problem with military people. It's disciplined boy. They say it one time politely and that's the end of it. And they still do in some cases. But when was it? 76, we stopped the draft.
I think that's right.
I think 76. We stopped the draft and started recruiting females too. I have a good friend. She went through, she's in Tennessee, and she went through school on a military scholarship, just like I did. And she became an officer when she graduated, and she was a major. And she married one man who gave her a son, and they split, and she married another officer, and he gave her a daughter, and they split. Bless her heart. I talked to her 2 or 3 times a week. She and my wife were real close. We were next door neighbors, and they were both in the military, assigned to Fort Carson to the 4th Infantry Division. Glenna was a major, and her husband was a lieutenant colonel. When they split, I don't know. I don't know about women sometimes. See, we can always blame it on women, and that's not necessarily true.
Nope.
That's a big, big mistake. There would be no civilization if we didn't have women.
Yep.
Now, the closest thing that makes you wonder about that is the little people that we found, we know about that came off the UFOs that we had. They were all dead when we got them. And you know what's strange about those little people? They had no reproductive organs, any of them. So how did they get them? Somebody made them.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing coming off the UFOs, and there's pictures of them on occasion, we would like to see the people that made them. Somebody made them because they had no reproduction organ. One of the nurses that went out, I think was at that place in New Mexico where that UFO hit the ground.
Roswell.
Roswell. Before she died,
Oops.
that young lady, well, she wasn't young, but before she died, she wrote what she found when she went there, everything about the craft they were in, the little people, the little animals. I call them animals, you don't know what they are.
Yeah.
And they're humanoid, but they have none of them have any reproductive organs. And she, before she died, she wanted to write that down, and she did, and it got published. And they can't cover it up. I'm a Trekkie. I don't make any bones about it. An old Star Trekkie, he's so old now.
Kirk.
Yeah.
Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk. He was not the first Captain Kirk though, the one that's there. They had another guy in the first 3 or 4 episodes of Star Trek. They had another guy who was Captain Kirk.
I don't remember, but I remember, but I don't remember the name.
I don't either.
Yep.
And he didn't last very long. But he made the first 3 or 4 Star Treks. And then we got the one that became famous doing it.
Yeah.
Captain Kirk. fantastic. Now, my military career was extremely interesting. And no matter what the situation was, I always enjoyed what I was doing for some reason.
Did you ever do photography like for fun later?
Oh yes,
later?
I did photography for, even after I was retired, I was still doing it.
I wondered while you were serving in these various places if you would do.
Yes, I have pictures. In World War II, in the Navy, they would not let us have a camera. And the only way we could have pictures is to get the camera that the unit owned and take pictures and give it back to them to develop. So I have a stack of pictures that big when I was in service. In fact, I should have brought them with me.
Well, during your service too, they integrated?
They started after I retired, but we had female officers, not many.
Well, and blacks, for African American blacks.
Not many.
Not many?
No, what they did, I think, when I had my computer, they gave a list one day of all the people that had retired prematurely, general officers and everybody, since Obama became president. And it's a 4-page strip that long of people that retired prematurely. They didn't wait for 30, they got out. And I gave my computer away a year or two ago to my niece Patty, who's got a granddaughter, and I gave her my computer. And she was just thrilled, boy. Oh, a real computer, yes, and it worked. But I'm going to put this in a box, and I have the Phi Delta pen and one other pen in it, and put a little note in it, seal it, donated to Phi Delta Theta by me on this date. So they can have it and look at it and say, "You mean old Luke came back and gave you his membership card? He's the very first place." Yes, he did. I'm going to do it.
They should take a picture of you actually doing it, though. Actually handing it over.
Oh yes,
They should.
I get a picture of it. I still, my camera, all the camera work I ever did was with developer and printer. Okay. Now they've got this new electronic. You don't even have film.
Yeah.
And I bought a really nice one. And I've used it 2 or 3 times. But you gotta wait. And you've got to take the camera to a store and leave it. And they extract that and print the pictures off of it. Have you ever done, you have a camera that?
I use my phone.
Okay, that's what, but.
Well, and like this one.
Can you get a picture off of there?
Yeah, and like this one, it has that you take.
Oh, okay,
That
you got the card.
Yeah, and then you take it to the.
And they print off of that.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, what kind of is that? That's a fancy one. Nikon. What else?
Yeah.
How big is that lens? How far? It says on the front. That's a long range lens. Should be right on the front.
I think it's
18 to 140. That, yes. FBX Nikon. Okay. This is for taking pictures at long range, and they call it something. But that tells you right there. 18 is called wide angle, where you can sit here and shoot that whole wall wide angle. The other one is a guy 50 yards away and bring him right to you. Yeah, this is a nice camera.
Yeah.
Did you buy this thing?
It's the office, belongs to the office.
God, look at that. This is nice.
Yeah.
This is money. I have an Icon, but I bought it 3 years ago, and I read the instruction book and said very politely to hell with it. This is not as bad. This is not. It's much more versatile than my film cameras ever were.
I know the basics, and that's about it.
And
All right, we've covered a lot. What else do we need to cover? What advice would you give students today?
what?
What advice would you give to students today?
I would tell students, especially the male ones, to consider taking ROTC. And the reason I would do that is because the largest majority of commissioned officers in all the armed forces are ROTC graduates. They are not graduates of those academies. The academies could no more produce the requirement for officers for the armed forces than they can fly backwards. They can't do it. And the government would never give them the money to expand anyway. There is 4,000 in the Air Force Academy. And it's in 4 different grades, 4 years in there. And they do good. And the biggest problem is the retention rate. A lot of the people get married and have children, and they are the ones that suffer. Every 3 years they move. How long are you going to do that? The kids and the wives are going to get tired of it.
Yep.
And that's why there is a heavy divorce rate of military wives, just because of that. They pick up, the guy's home for 3 years, and he takes off for a year, leaves the wife. Yeah.
Well, yours lasted 27. Do you know what the secret was?
No.
Perseverance, huh?
Okay, yes.
Well, where do you consider home? Since you've been all over, where do you consider home?
My home, I still call it, was Paul's Valley.
Was Paul's Valley.
I was raised there. I think Mother and Dad moved there from Durant, and my younger brother, I was born in Durant, but my younger brother was born in Paul's Valley. So I haven't been home in, so I went down there 3 years ago. I have all my arrangements made for my burial, and in Paul's Valley, my dad bought plots in the cemetery for he and Mother and his 3 children. Well, Mother and Dad are the only ones that are buried there. And I went down and I paid all the money. It's all paid for. Everything's paid for. The transportation, the headstone, everything. And Patty doesn't have to worry about a thing. And I think she appreciates that.
Yes.
I think she would do it anyway, but I've shown her the paperwork and the contracts, and I said, everything, you don't have to pay a penny for nothing.
And it's done.
Even moving my body from here to Paul's Valley. Now, my wife was cremated, and I have her here in a jug in the office. That they got it in security, and they're going to bury her in my coffin with me.
And her kids were okay with that?
Yes. She got into it with her own children before it was over. And I only have one contact of her children I ever even talked to. And he's big red Nebraska football, you know how the Irish people are. But the rest of them, it's none of their business. Now, if you read the tombstone, her name is on there.
Okay.
My name is on there, and her full name, Joannette Johnson Tolson Walker, is on that. So there's no mistaking who that is.
Okay.
And she's in a beautiful little home, I think and they've got it here in security.
Well, you got it all taken care of then.
Everything is paid for.
That's good.
And Patty, my little niece, she loves it too.
Yep, a good peace of mind for everybody.
And I said, hey, these are the papers for my funeral, paid for. This is for moving me to Pauls Valley, paid for. Everything's paid for.
Have you written your obituary too?
No. I have one that's close.
I thought if you're planning that far, you might have done that.
Well, I have one that could almost be used for an
Okay.
obituary.
What do you want it to say about you?
Nothing, just another old soldier.
Served his country well?
Well, if you don't, the people, when they find out I was in the service, everybody thank you for your service.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, I don't know why. All of a sudden, if they find out you were in the service, they will say that to you right now.
Yep.
I've never seen that. But they do, thank you for your service.
And 29 years of it, you did.
And I would have gone for 30, but that damn Ethiopia. And what really got me about Ethiopia, I don't know if I mentioned it. I went into this beautiful jewelry store. I looked down and I'm standing on a dirt floor. The store's there. They don't put floors down. It's dirt. And here is this beautiful stuff of jewelry everywhere standing on dirt in Ethiopia.
Well,
You learn, when you become a globetrotter, you learn a lot of things that are strange to you.
you've had an amazing life.
I've been extremely lucky. I am lucky on my health. I told someone the other day, I'm not going for 95, I'm going for the 100.
Okay. And what's your secret, do you think? Do you do anything in particular?
You know, I've thought about some things. I take Consumers Report magazine. Have you ever taken it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I take it. They can come up with more different stuff in there about medicine and stuff, not just all other stuff. Consumer Reports has some stuff in it. And one of the things, they wrote an article on extended age. And everybody sells magic. We'll keep you alive to 120. Buy our $500 product. It cost us $5 to make. Yeah. You gotta watch those clowns. When you look at it and you see a little pill, I take, my left lung is infected and they cannot kill it with anything. So the doctor was going to take it out. And he said, look, we're going to take your lung out. And I said, I don't think so. I'm the doctor. He looked at me and I said, I'm not signing the damn release. And I've been in your hospital 3 weeks and I'm leaving today. You can't, you're going to take all this medicine. They had a permanent thing in my arm. I said, you have visiting nurses. Send them out to give me the medicine. And I walked out that afternoon. I'd been in there 3 weeks. And I went in with walking pneumonia. I lost 37 pounds and have never gained it back. I'm a skeleton.
So that may help you live to 100,
I don't know.
being thinner.
I do know I have lived longer than anyone in the Walker tribe ever.
Do you exercise?
On occasion, I consider walking.
Yeah.
I walk usually out of my pad there, and I walk up to Riverview or Creekview or whatever that big street is, come back, go around the other way, walk it, come back. It's a little over a mile. I drove it in my car one day to see how far it was. A little over a mile. And I walk. And I feel pretty good. I'm not going to complain about nothing. At my age,
Yeah.
no way, Jose.
And do you take like high blood pressure medicine or anything like that?
No, I take a very powerful antibiotic
Oh, for that.
for my lung. Azithromycin is an antibiotic. And they show taking it every day, but for 3 years when the doctor wrote my prescription, he said, Luke, you only take this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You don't take it any other time. Okay. And I've been taking it.
Well, that's remarkable too.
Well, it seems so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
And you eat what you want to eat?
Snacks. He said, Luke, do not eat a full meal. And I said, that's no problem. I'm never hungry. I haven't been hungry or had any taste in 5 years. No. I could just expire not eating. I'm never hungry. So there's no big incentive, and I eat snacks. But I do go down every morning to Jimmy's Egg and eat a nice breakfast.
Okay.
And every book I have says breakfast is the most important meal. Don't miss it.
Yeah.
And I go down at about 8 o'clock every morning. I drive down there. Charge the battery in my car. Otherwise, it's never driven. You know, the other day I went to start it. It was dead. I said, "Oh my God!" And I was parked down at Jimmy's Egg, and a young man was there, and I said, "Can you give me a jump?" And he said, "Sure." I said, "I've got the cables in my back seat." And he hooked it up, jumped it, and said, "Try it down." It started right up. And I haven't had too many problems with it. And I have a 98 Ford Suburban, really nice, big, heavy car. That thing weighs 5,500 pounds.
I'd have trouble parking it.
Do you?
I would have trouble parking it.
No, you would. You sit up higher too.
It's too long.
Oh, okay. But my Suburban sits up higher, which is, you look at things different sitting up higher.
And easier to get in and out of.
And it was had the biggest, hottest engine Ford made when it was manufactured. It's a 98, made 97. I have these idiots that come up on my tail, and I leave them, and they try to pass me, and they can't. And when they go by, I say, "See you later." I'm brutal sometimes. Okay.
And was that from being in the military?
Yes. It was really interesting when I was in the military. My second wife, Joanette, was a practicing Christian. I want to say devout, but it didn't fit her. But she was a practicing. And the first thing she did was clean my mouth up.
Yes.
And she said, "I don't appreciate your language, Luther." And she called me Luther. No, she called me Luther, you know. "I don't like your language." "Okay, darling, I'll clean up my mouth." And I did. And she gave me the best 33 years of my life. And if I'd ever got a promotion, I would never have seen her again.
Well, if you could have won her mother over.
No, her mother had passed away. She didn't have.
No, but early on, if you could have.
Oh, no way. What happened to her? She lost her brother, her husband, and her mother in 1 year. And I only got her into a funeral home one time in 30 years. She'd had it with funeral. Yeah, she lost her mother, her brother, and her husband in 1 year. And I got her to one funeral, that's all.
Well, I'd say she'd say that was a good 33 years for her too.
I think she said it was worth the wait.
Oh, okay.
How about that?
That's good.
Because she had those, her daughter was born 9 months to the day from when she was married. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And just absolutely lovely lady. She put up with me and got me cleaned up. And to where I was acting more normal, you might say.
Well, maybe she was the secret to living to be 94.
Yes.
That those 30 years was
Something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, nobody in my family ever lived this long. Nobody. I think mother lived longer than mother or father or my two brothers. Because nobody lived this long.
Well, I'm hoping for 100 and I can come back.
Oh, okay. I'm going for the 100. How's that sound?
That sounds
I'm going
good.
for the 100.
I think that's a good time to stop, don't you, on that?
And I would be more than happy to recommend anyone attend this school.
Okay.
As long as we don't have summer hail. No, this is a wonderful school. I have some experience. I went to Kansas University. It's an alma mater. You know what alma mater means?
How do you tell us?
Bountiful mother. It's Latin. Alma mater. Bountiful. How about that? Did you learn something new?
I did. Plus, it's Oklahoma State University of Agriculture and Mechanical.
Oh, and applied science.
It's not right.
Everybody now is a scientist that graduates here.
Okay.
Oklahoma State University of Agriculture and Applied Science
Okay.
is the name of this school. Now, I'll sit down and put money down with everybody here that they don't know the correct name of the school, and I'll make a bunch of money.
Well, you would have made it for me too, because I just stopped at Oklahoma State University, then stopped.
I call it Oklahoma Scientific University. That's different.
But you're still an Aggie at heart.
I am an Aggie, make no mistake.
Okay.
And will be an Aggie the rest of my life. Because I have the best college, basic college, I possibly could have had by attending this school. And I know it. And even though I was on probation for grades a couple of times, it all worked out. One of the classes that Joe and I took together when I was engaged to her was marriage. They taught a marriage class here. Do they still teach it? I bet you they don't.
I don't know.
Okay, but they taught a marriage class, and Joe and I went and took it. Well, it was pretty nice, but it was parts of marriage. Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
well, back in those days too, you had to take PE classes.
we had the only one that no,
No, you didn't have to take like riflery or swimming or
No.
dancing or anything.
no. I don't remember that.
Okay.
The only thing I remember was you had to have Oklahoma history, or you had to take a course in it, and that was mandatory. And that's the only thing I could remember. And I remember that a lot of my chemistry teachers were ladies. Yes. And it worked out real good and everything. And I can't remember one of my classes, we went into a thing, it was like an auditorium, and there was 100 of us in that class, someplace on this campus. But I just consider myself lucky.
Okay. Well, I consider myself lucky to have spent the afternoon with you, so thank you for sharing it with me.
Well, yes. I have enjoyed this tremendously.
Good.
And you have worked at my marbles up there a little bit, trying to think of the right words to use.
Well, you've done good. Thank you very much.
And if you ever need something else, give me a call. I'll be glad to.
Okay.
And I hope that the young people who have the opportunity to see this understands an old antique 96-year-old. Older than dirt, but still above it.
Okay, there you go.